You know, guys, in my career, I have found myself on the side of the road with lights flashing in my mirror dozens of times. Sometimes I had it coming, but more often than not, I was just doing what you guys are probably doing every day, going to work at a speed I found pretty reasonable. Did you know that 1 in 5 drivers get a ticket every single year, but only 5% of drivers can test their tickets? That means big business and big revenue for the police and the court system. You're always better off fighting any ticket, especially with the help of a professional. But how do you find that professional, especially if you get a ticket outside of your home city? Off the Record fights tickets and misdemeanors for drivers all across the country. When you book a case with Off the Record, you're matched with an experienced local lawyer that handles your case from start to finish. Off the Record has a 97% success rate and a money-back guarantee if they don't keep that ticket off your record. Do yourself a favor and always fight your tickets. Go to offtherecord.com/TST, the link is in the video description, or download the iOS and Android Off the Record app and enter code TST10. Do it now because the code will cover all your legal services through Off the Record for 3 whole years. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a very interesting driving day up here in the canyons. It's 60 degrees at the bottom of the hill. It's 40 degrees at the top of the hill. Part of the road is dry, part of the road is wet, and we might even get to snow because we're going to keep going up. This is the 2020 Porsche Macan Turbo with Sport Chrono. Now, in 2018, I drove the Macan Turbo with Performance Pack, which was actually an officially marketed horsepower bump on that car. They didn't call it the Turbo S because ceramic brakes were not standard. That's sort of the Porsche way of naming things. If it's a Turbo S, ceramic brakes are standard. That's how it goes. So this is the Macan Turbo, not an S, okay? But it is optioned out in pretty much the highest performing way you can get it, with the ceramic brakes for $4,600, with the adaptive air suspension including PASM, the Sport Chrono package, and the 21-inch 911 turbo design wheels. And yeah, it's also got Porsche's Torque Vectoring system. This is a new engine for 2020. It's a 2.9-liter V6 twin turbo with the hot V design, meaning the intake comes in from the outside and the turbos sit in the middle of the V. It's a very interesting little engine. It makes 434 horsepower and 405 pounds of torque, which astute viewers may note is actually less than the Turbo Performance Pack I drove 2 years ago. Having said that, Porsche says this is 0.3 faster to 60 than the old Turbo, and 0.2 faster than the old Turbo with Performance Pack. How that works, I don't know, but they say they've reprogrammed the Pdk, reprogrammed all the systems, so maybe they found some speed somewhere else besides purely adding horsepower. It only weighs 4,244 pounds, which is heavy, but it's 1,000 pounds lighter than a Cayenne. 1,000. So the power it makes is used more efficiently, and it can tow a little bit. The Macan Turbo can tow 5,291 pounds, actually. The base brakes are Porsche's new tungsten carbide coated discs, which are denoted by the white calipers. They're pretty cool. Very little brake dust, very high performing. Not as good as PCCBs, but also standard and not $5,000. They've also redesigned the brake pedal, which is very interesting. Most companies don't talk about, well, we redesigned a pedal. They put bigger calipers, or they put bigger rotors, or they find a new pad material, or a new brake fluid, or whatever. Porsche went, you know, we could improve feel by making our brake pedal out of a different material. It's now like a fiberglass resin, and then also having a more direct connection to the master cylinder, which I find particularly interesting. We're going to go for a drive. Let's go into sport mode, manual, sport shock, exhaust open, and let's go. last Macan Turbo, and still love this one. As a daily driver, it would be, you know, EVs aside, of course, for their own set of reasons, petrol-powered daily drivers, hard for me to come up with something that's better than this. And I mean, by the way, the lesser Macans as well, because although the Squirrel lived, although the power is brilliant here and the performance options are fantastic, day-to-day use, not doing this, not doing journalism, just driving to work, the regular Macans are pretty nice. Even the 4-cylinder one, which my friend got as a loaner and I drove, and not bad. Especially you get a little tune on that. A little sharpens it up a bit. A lot of the stuff that you've seen on 911 has trickled down through into the Macan. Stuff like the sport response mode, which you can turn on the dial, and it basically puts your car straight from regular old cruise mode to, I'm gonna need 20 seconds of full-on murder mobbing, and it gets your car in that mode. If you're using manual, it doesn't really matter, but if you're using PDK, it'll get that done for you right quick. The ride is beautiful. Double wishbones up front, and it's sort of a variant on a multi-link in the rear. It's not a traditional multi-link, and I actually am kind of blanking on the terminology that Porsche uses for it. But the ride is really good, and the adaptive air suspension has been retuned to spread open the envelope between comfort and sport a little bit, to give you a little wider of a spread. And actually, we were out for a little drive yesterday, and my wife Hannah really was absolutely staggered at how good the ride was of this thing on the 405 freeway, which is typically, with its expansion joints, particularly terrible. One thing I really liked about the old Macan, and it's true, just as true here, is how well it lets you feel the weight transfer. I can really feel, it's not that it's rolling, because there's not much roll. It stays pretty flat. There's a little bit, but it's good. It's that I can really feel how my inputs are controlling the weight transfer of the vehicle. And if you've ever driven on loose surface, you ever drive rally car, or you ride motorcycles, or you do track days, you race, you know that weight transfer is everything. How you move the weight of the car around will determine how that car sticks to the road or slips from the road. And I love the Macan because it does such a great job of being firm and tight, but also telling me exactly what wheel the weight is moving towards, so I can adjust accordingly. Now, Pdk Gearbox, it's great. It's always great. I have never had a complaint about PDK ever. I don't anticipate I will anytime soon. It is amazing, and I've said this before, how much it makes, quote, regular cars feel like a, quote, Porsche. The snappiness, the response, the way the gear changes happen, it extends that Porsche feel into things that aren't the traditional Porsche feel, like this crossover. What's really cool is, and I need maybe some room for it around this next series of bends, what's really cool is both the way that the engine's exhaust really manages to mimic Porsche's own flat sixes at the top of the power band. I just barely got into it. I don't know if you're going to see it. I ran out of room. Maybe I'll just go down a gear. When you get between 6,000 and 6,800, which is 6,800 is the red line for the Macan, it really takes over almost the GT car's shriek. Listen. Especially when you hit the red line, it does the same exact thing the 911 does. And that's just a little bit of that Porsche feel, that Porsche sports car feel that they've dialed in to the Macan. other tricks too. Listen, right at the very top before you hit the rev limiter, it sounds just like a 911 for a second, which is very cool. V6s are tough. V6s do not traditionally sound good. Even some of the high-performance V6s. Uh-oh. What do you say, bud? Can I scoot you by? Do you want to pull over right here? What do you say? There's a good spot right here. Right here. Right here. Right here. Oh. Well, while we're going slow, listen to this. If I put it back in regular mode, what I'm really impressed with. So what I was saying is V6s don't normally sound good. They get boomy and drony. Think ATS-V Cadillac. Think Nissan GTR or the VQ, and they can be tuned out, but typically not the best. This one sounds really nice. It's tight, not drony, and it's got a good note that, like I said before, reminds you of the 911 at the very top of the power band. In normal mode, what you don't get out of the V6 that you do get out of the flat 6 is you don't get that drone resonance at the very bottom. It's fine in normal mode, putting around. That it's okay, and so that's very good. Now I think I'm going to have to pull over and wait for this Jeep to move, because unless they're going to move for me, no, we'll be right back. On the handling front, like I said, the weight transfer, all that stuff is really dialed in. They've done a fancy trick here with the steering as well. It's a smaller steering wheel. One of the ways you can sort of fake the improvement in steering weight and feel and directness is by going with a smaller wheel. I did that trick in my old Corvette. I got rid of the big stock C5 wheel and put in a smaller Sparco wheel, and it actually does work. It ups the weight of the steering, it ups the perception of the feel and directness of the steering. You can go too far, and you can make the steering weight too heavy. But what Porsche's done here is shrink the steering wheel a little bit. They use the same wheel as you get with the 911 and other sports cars, and they've shrunk it, and it's cranked up the weight of the steering just a little bit from the other ones. All right, so we've caught this Jeep again. That didn't take long at all. Is he gonna move over? Is that because he's on the brakes? Yeah. No? All right. Well, I guess this is flip around time. Turning radius is very good. We can do a launch, actually. Let's go into Sport Plus. Very easy. We'll leave it in automatic. Left foot brake, right foot gas, 5,000 RPM, and we go. Quite undramatic, easy, very Porsche. Back to manual, 0 to 60, like I said, in the low 4s, which, listen, 4,200 pound vehicle, that's pretty good. This is nice. Downsides. Yeah, there's a couple downsides. If you're tall like me, I'm 6'3". If you're tall like me and you intend to put full-sized humans in the back seat often, you may run into a little bit of spatial issues. The back seat is fine if it's for average size adults. If you've got tall, loungy folks in the front, you may run out of some rear seat room. Also, the Cayenne can tow more. I don't know the exact tow rating of the Cayenne, but because the Cayenne Turbo uses a traditional torque converter automatic and not the PDK, it does have a higher tow rating. It also has a V8. And also, this thing is expensive. The Macan Turbo starts at $83,000. That's a bump of $6,000 from the last generation. But and then this one with all the stuff on it is over 100 grand. It's 101,000. So there are some things I could lose. There's a couple bits and bobs that cost money, and this Miami blue color, as dope as it is, as much as I love it, it was $3,500. Probably don't need that. The ceramic brakes, cool for a press car, but I'm not going to track days. We can go with the tungsten carbide brakes as standard, so we can easily, just right now, just smash 10,000 bucks off this. So now we're down at 90, and yes, still expensive. But if I'm honest, and I am going to be honest here, I'd rather use a Macan Turbo as a daily driver than an M3. Not to mention, I think I'd rather use this as a daily driver than any sports sedan on sale right now. Because this, it's not really, yeah, it's a little taller, but it's not really that big. It's not really that tall. It's not really that long. It's not really that wide. It does have big rims on it, but fundamentally, it's a lot closer to a luxury rally car than it is to a proper SUV. It doesn't feel that tall. It doesn't feel top heavy. It doesn't feel nose heavy. It doesn't feel like you're going to smoke the brakes, even if the brakes are enormous. And it's far more responsive than the traditional SUV, even the traditionally fast SUV. You gotta understand, I'm coming at this Macan Turbo. My dad owns a Cayenne Turbo. He's owned 2 Cayenne Turbos. And I don't love the Cayenne Turbo. I've driven all of them, including I drove the new Cayenne Turbo E-Hybrid Coupe in Germany. And it was cool. It was a neat toy, especially the hybrid. But it was 5,600 pounds. I mean, that's like driving this with a Caterham on it, on the roof. I mean, those are so heavy, and so for the performance, the space, which is totally functional for most errands and most things, most times. You know, I really prefer the PDK. I prefer the responsiveness, the lighter weight. The front seat space from this to a Cayenne is not hugely different. The difference is mostly in the back seat. Cayenne's greenhouse is a little bit brighter, but again, even all things considered, I find this to be more fun than Cayenne. And in fact, I think this is pretty much the most fun. This is the most fun crossover you can buy. It feels fast. We're up at almost 5,000 feet here. Top of the crest is high, and so we're up here, and it's still making really good power. It's still got really nice power. I'm such a fan. This thing rules. You know, it's on the one hand, yes, I lament the transition of the sports sedan into the fast crossover, and some people are definitely, and some companies are definitely doing it better than others. The Macan is very good. All the Macans are very good. And the Turbo is really, 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 really good. Really good. Like the 911 Turbo, are most people going to notice the power difference over the GTS or the S? Well, it's a completely different engine from the S now. You used to be able to turn an S into a GTS with basically just a cop tune. But now it's a different engine, so you can't do that anymore. So you got the 4-cylinder is the base, the 3-liter V6 is an S, and then you've got the 2.9 in 2 different trims for GTS and Turbo. So you can't just ECU your way up from one to the other anymore. Having said that, most people probably don't need the Turbo. And I think the sweet spot for a Macan is about $70,000 to $75,000. That gets you in a nice S territory. But if you're looking for that 80 to 100K sports sedan, I would also consider a Macan Turbo because it handles really like a sports sedan. I mean, the limits of an M3 may be this much higher on dry pavement. It may be, but for all intents and purposes, you're talking about the same thing. And I've put snow tires on these before, and oh, are they good. Oh my God, a Macan on snow tires is so fun in the snow, going up to Mammoth. That's just the best. So Conclusion, it's incredibly responsive. It's very fast. It's very fun. The steering is dialed in. The weight transfer is bang on. The way it talks to you throughout a corner is bang on. The ride is bang on. And the only problems with it are pretty much that it costs more money than I have. That's pretty much it. But you know, I love the one I drove in 2018, January of 2018, and I'm really a fan of this too. So shout out to Porsche for letting me have this thing for a week and enjoying these the forest. Wow, look at that! Enjoying being up here above the fog in the Angeles Forest. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys later. Bye. And remember, everybody, always fight your tickets. Go to fight.offtherecord.com/TST for a special exclusive deal on all legal services for TST viewers. And remember, always fight your tickets. Go to offtherecord.com/TST or use code TST10 on the Off the Record app.